just be stronger again.
Okay, joined by Nat Day and Doctor. Hoping to get Wally Hennessy on the line here shortly at this edition of COSA TV. We're going to get to our first trivia question of the night, and we're going to a yearling sale, and we want to know the highest price yearling, standardbred yearling, ever sold at auction in Canada. Who's the highest priced yearling ever sold at a standardbred auction in Canada? And as always, our answers in the comments. And we will recap the answers at the end of the show, and going to be drawing one name at random, winning answer for that $25 COSA gift card. Well, as we get set to return, Ian, you talked about Century Pharaoh tattoo artists and some of those you're excited having returning this year. And it wasn't that long ago, at around 2015, when you were very excited about a pacer who was getting set to retract his name, Treasurer. You know, as you look back at his career now, at what point when you got him, he was going to be something special?
Well, as the story goes, Kenny Arsenault broke and trained the horse down at the CDP in Charlottetown. Alan McDonald had bought him for $6,500 at the Harrisburg sale that year. I believe he got me to look at him, and I might have made the comment he was small, but he was well put together. And so Kenny called me about maybe early May, I think it was, of his 2-year-old year, and said, I got a good one to send up to you. That was the exact words. So I said, great, send him up. Alan brought him up himself, and I started jogging him. He seemed like a real nice horse, but the time when he seemed really special was when I qualified him for the first time in June at Mohawk. I had a girl working with me. She's gone to Venezuela now, I think, at the time, but we took him in there, and I like to qualify the babies myself. So, you know, so some of the catch drivers don't send them down the road in 26 seconds in the quarter or whatever. But anyway, I went with him, and I believe there's 9 in the qualifier, and I was last going into the final turn. And I moved him, and I just asked him once, and he took off. And he was going that fast that I actually moved out another lane in case somebody pulled in front of me, because I wasn't going to stop him. He circled the field in about an eighth of a mile and won his qualifier. And I think that he won his first lifetime start then, maybe with Paul McTonnell driving 152 in a bit, I believe, at the time. So he certainly did seem like a very special animal right from the get-go. He struggled a little bit as a 3-year-old maybe, but not bad. And then 4-year-old and age horse, he started to excel. Got better with age.
There's a look at him now, Ian, as a stallion. I mean, how much different does he look now as a grown-up compared to the youngster you had in your barn?
Well, he's not as trim and athletic looking. I see him every year at Sealsters. I go there to look at yearlings, and I see him at least
with
once
Dr.
a year.
Ian Moore. Ian?
And sorry. And anyway, he is in great shape. Sealster look after him very well. And he still likes squealing at the mares. You know, funny thing about him, when he was a baby, he was a very immature youngster. And even into his 3-year-old year, he had this high-pitched squeal, and he was very immature. And Nancy and I, my wife Nancy and I, took him to Tioga Downs for the Cane Pace in September of his 3-year-old year. And I think it was Linda Tassiano had a mare that she was walking out to warm up, and stopped right in front of him. And it just seemed to change his attitude right there towards mares, and he just sort of grew up overnight, I think, and he got to be quite roary and squealy and that sort of thing around, you know, anytime he was near mares or other horses after that point in time. But he was certainly a pleasure to work with, and you know, I've had the fortune to have a lot of decent horses in my lifetime, and there's not many that are going to top the desire that he had to just do his very best for you every time he stepped on the racetrack, whether that be jogging, training, or racing.
Yeah, and he took on the very best of his crop, and especially as an older pacer, where he really had his best moments. A three-time winner here in London of our signature race, the Molson Pace, now named at the Camelot Classic. We have a Camelot Classic show coming up in a couple of weeks, so we wanted to save those replays for that show. But when you look back at his many great moments, Canadian Derby as well, or particular race that were most fun that year was maybe his most impressive.
You cut out a little bit there, but I think you're asking me to tell you the most impressive times, races that we had with State Treasure. And there's three of them that come to mind really for me. And one was the race where he had the rail. I thought we're all set to win the Molson Pace, and he made the break leaving. And that was a heck of a race, really, how he circled that field from where he did in that last turn on that track. I mean, that just made it extra phenomenal to see that. And I raced a lot at London when I was up here going to school back in the 70s and 80s, and I don't think I've ever saw a horse do that before, especially that caliber. So that was a big one. Yeah. And the Canadian Pacing Derby, Randy Waples with a gutsy move to go 3 wide at the half. I really enjoyed that one. And of course, the other one was the U.S. Pacing Championship, where he took his record with Dave Miller, driving in 147 and a little bit down at the Meadowlands on a nice sunny day. That was a big one as well. And, you know, we took the horse to Charlottetown, I think when he was 4 years old, to try for the Gold Cup and Saucer. And he wasn't quite right at the time, and I was a bit hesitant, but then I think we had qualified him the week before, and everything seemed good, so we took him, and he made a break in the turn. We were going to let Kenny drive him, and it just didn't work out. But that just shows you how hard it is to win the Gold Cup and Saucer. We have a horse that made a couple $1 million and couldn't even make the final of the Gold Cup and Saucer.
Absolutely. You mentioned Pacing Championship, and in fact, we're going to have a look back at that now. And a race that you have had good luck in the course of your career. Of course, won it with Shadow as well back in 2009, I believe, with him. So we're going to take a look back now. Curtis is trying to get Wally on the line here, but here is a look back at that 2015 edition of the U.S. Pacing Championship in the Big M.
On the outside into the first turn, State Treasurer in between them. Mock It So on the rail, then it's Do Wop Hanover at the back with Somewhere in LA up and around Wake Up Peter, the early trailer. Dancing Yankee, Jim Morrill Jr. establishes a 2-length lead by the opening quarter. J.K. End of an Era settles in for a 2-hold. Here comes Foiled Again, grinding his way up on the outside off a quarter of 26 flat. State Treasurer going up 4th on the outside. Early shuffle for Better's Edge back to 5th. Mock It So to the outside. The Houghton winners 6th on the outside, 4.5 from the lead as they race across the backstretch. Then it's Do Wop Hanover and Wake Up Peter and Somewhere in LA. Foiled Again takes the lead. Foiled Again now. State Treasurer applies immediate pressure with Dave Miller. 53 for the half mile, 27 flat in the second quarter. State Treasurer Foiled Again on the rail. J.K. End of an Era with a dreamy golden second over. 3rd on the outside. Dancing Yankee is now pinned in. Mock It So in the lively flow. He's now 2nd over. Do Wop Hanover gets in gear. 3rd over right now. Then Better's Edge with a bad shuffle. Somewhere in LA and Wake Up Peter losing touch. State Treasurer has taken over past 3/4, leads it by 2. J.K. End of an Era on the outside. Foiled Again trying to battle back on the inside. Mock It So is 3 wide. 1:19 and 4 for 3/4. State Treasurer looking to turn it on. Dave Miller and State Treasurer now by 3. Foiled Again is full out. Pinned in Dancing Yankee. Between them is Mock It So. Better's Edge looks for room. And J.K. End of an Era. But it's all State Treasurer. He blew them away. State Treasurer. 147 flat. Do Wop Hanover in the photo for place there with Foiled Again. 147. State Treasurer in the U.S. Pacing Championship.
Ian, from the day Saunders glory back in the 1970s in Prince Edward Island to 147 miles in the U.S. Pacing Championship. It's surreal sometimes when you look back at it.
Yeah, it sure is. And it's amazing how times and things have changed so much over the years. It would be very interesting if we could see some of those horses of that era, Song of Glory era, come and race today, see how they would do. But that was, I think at the time, that somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was the sixth fastest mile in harness racing at the time. And it was quite a thrill, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Nat Day, again, we mentioned at the top, you were a transfer from Australia. So maybe talk about that journey, first of all, how you end up from Australia to making a home here in Canada and driving racehorses.
Well, I first ended up in for about 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and then yeah, went back home for 12 months, and then came back over here to Canada. Got a visa to work, and shifted over here to Canada, and yeah, kind of haven't looked back since, really.
And how did you get into the sport initially down under?
My mum and dad trained and drove. He did it all his life, and I was the only one out of 7 kids that actually kind of followed in his footsteps, and I was the last one. So I don't know whether I was the stupid one or what, but yeah, I decided to go into it, and yeah, it's, we worked together there for quite a while, quite a number of years, Dad and I, and then I went out on my own, and then we shifted states and whatnot and moved around, and then we ended up back in the same state again, and Dad would come out and help me with the horses and train 1 or 2, and I'd train 5 or 6 others, and yeah, and then he eventually retired, and that's when I kind of decided, well, it's, we had a few tracks shut down back home where I was, and it was just time to move on, try somewhere different. It was either that or, have to go interstate again, which I wasn't real keen on doing. So I thought I'd try something completely new.
And how did you do? How did you do down under? For those who followed your career or weren't following your career, how successful?
Yeah, I had my fair share of handy, decent horses. I managed to train a few that I got that are basically won 2 races, and I managed to get them through to Breeders' Crown eliminations and get them through to semi-finals. And I had size stakes horses that I'd bred myself, and yeah, Dad was the same. Dad had super success. He used to break in a lot of the babies for all the leading trainers, and then we'd take him to the qualifiers, and I'd drive him at the qualifiers, and then we'd hand him back to the trainers again. So I was brought up from the ground up, from basically, driving all the babies and pretty much trying to go through a few fences and hitting trees and through ditches. And so that's where I'm kind of I'm not too frightened of the ones that do things wrong. So yeah, I had a good career. I had good owners that always supported me. It was just a case of, unfortunately, over there, I had a team of 10 horses. You can't afford to pay anyone to help you. That Dad had come out and helped me, and you'd have 2 decent horses, which would pretty much have to pay for the rest of the team, and even they would be winning. And then at the end of the day, you look at your tax and whatnot, and you're like, this just isn't worth it. We just don't race for enough money for the amount of traveling that you have to do. And that's the thing, when you horses, it's no different to here. You've got to travel interstate. You're away for weeks at a time, chasing the grand circuits, and it's just, at the end of the day, the money wise, it kind of wasn't there for smaller stables. You pretty much had to be a big stable of 40, 50 horses with the top line owners behind you, which I had your bread and butter owners behind me. So yeah, that's when it just made it not so much worthwhile doing it. And when tracks shut down, it was just, time to move on and try it somewhere else and see if I could actually make a go of it over here.
Okay, for the viewers, I think it may be squealing in the background there. You've got an interesting or pets, I say. Tell us about that.
I have 3 birds. Two of them were actually hand-me-downs from Richard Moreau's place. He was going to let them out the door one day because they're so loud and started screaming. So I ended up volunteering to take them home, and I've had them for about 4 years now. And I just recently acquired a rainbow lorikeet, which is it's a bird from back in Australia, and they're known to be very vocal. So that's what you hear in the background. So I'm just hoping they kind of might shut up a little bit.
All right, just so people don't think you're having technical difficulties as well. I think we've
No.
got a photo to bring up next here, and it just shows you driving down under, and it shows you driving here in North America. So obviously some visual differences. Can you tell what the significant differences are? And maybe it's not quite the same now as it was back when you first started, but what were the differences at that time between Australia and North America?
One of the biggest differences I found was coming over, like the top photo was from New Jersey when I was working for Ross Krogan. And he used to just constantly say to me, you need to get the lean happening, girl. Get the lean, get the lean. And I'm like, I physically just, it's hard for me. It's very hard for me to do that and still be able to, control the horses, hold the horses, see where I'm going, see what I'm doing, make sure I don't plow anyone over. So it was definitely, that was my biggest challenge, and still is to this day. Like I still don't feel 100% comfortable sitting the way these guys sit over here. Like I can't get all the way back because I feel like you have no control of a horse, but that's me. But I've done, the style that's below, I've done that for like 30 years, that style. So it's hard to break out of it and rechange the way you do everything and your muscles and things like that. So, and another thing, like I found, our style back home as far as racing wise will be 3 wide at the half, and over here it's just like unheard of. The horses just physically can't do it over here. And I don't know whether it's just a different training style, whether it's because the races aren't necessarily run much faster. It's just something that you guys it's unheard of back here. If you're 3 high up the backside, everyone thinks, what is he doing? So it was kind of a little bit hard to get into that rhythm of things as well. Just learn to sit, be patient, don't move, and learn your horses that way, and learn the other horses around you and what they do.
And Ian, yourself, first of all, have you ever spent any time down under, and have you had horses over the years from down under in your stable?
No, I've never spent any time down under. And yes, I have had horses from down under, starting in 1976, I believe. I had one called Black Regal N with Kate Flanagan, who lives in Guelph, a Mustang Drive-In. And let's see, I had some others after that. They were okay, I guess. I didn't have any top horses that were from down under. Saunders Glory was actually from Great Britain. They didn't have the GB name on them back at that time. That came a few years later. But most of the horses I've had have been North American horses.
Yeah. And I remember, of course, you're a PEI native, myself as well, and we'd remember some of the older New Zealand horses, especially, that used to crop up there, and they were more of a grinder type horse. They didn't seem to speed that we had here, just a different style, as Nat said, and probably different training.
Yeah, that's for sure. They're all had a little bit of age on them. Like most of them were 5 years old and up when they came here. And they were grinders. A lot of the potato farmers at home used to buy them all the time down there. They're the ones that had the most money, I guess, and could buy the New Zealand and Australian horses. There was a good market for them back then. And I don't know, there's been a rather steady market recently again, it seems, but not like it was back then. There used to be a lot of horses being imported from down under back then. Perhaps there wasn't as many races at that time as there are nowadays either. But with the shortage of horses in North America, I often wonder why there isn't any more horses imported from Australia and New Zealand as there were back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, it seems many of the ones that come here now first surface in the Yonkers area. They're all good half-mile horses for the most part. But back in that day, probably a Boyd McDonald would be a name that people in PEI would certainly know, and had many great New Zealand horses over the years as well. So, and a shout out to our Maritime viewers tuning in tonight to see Wally Hennessy on the broadcast. He's having technical issues. We're still working on it. We're hoping to get him hooked up tonight. If it doesn't work out, we will certainly have him on one of our future shows. But Nat, so you're driving a lot now in Ontario at especially the signature tracks, London, Grand River, Flamborough Downs, those types of venues, Clinton in the summer. But working during the day for Richard Moreau, and you've been doing that for 5 years. So describe that operation to us. He's been perennially the leading trainer in Canada now for a number of years. So I would assume it's a very busy day-to-day operation.
Yeah, most times we have around about 60 plus horses there. Everyone looks after 5 horses. Everyone jogs their own. We have a set schedule that we work to. Everyone knows the schedule. Everyone knows their job. And everyone, it runs pretty well. It really does. It's probably one of the better run barns that I've kind of worked in and that I've seen. He has a lot of horses. He puts them in the right classes where they can win, and I think that's how he wins a lot of premierships. And he gets to pick and choose what he wants as well, which is a great position to be.
Getting some look at some footage. Now, this is Richard's own farm, correct?
Yes.
And where's he located?
He's located at Cook, so we're about 10 from Mohawk, not even. Yeah, I couldn't tell you how many acres. It's rather large. I think it might be around about the 50 mark, not quite. Has his own training track there, obviously. We have plenty of fields. Everything gets turned out of the mornings. Everything gets turned out of an afternoons. Horses are happy there. It's, good grass. They just get set into a routine and they enjoy it.
And it looks like a beautiful facility. What size training track does he have?
Yeah, half-mile training track. Basically, everything can get around that. And we have quite a more Mohawk horses than the B track horses, but basically everything can get around that half-mile track.
And was there any impact with COVID-19 in terms of the workforce there? And I know he's got a lot of raceway horses, so really reliant on having live racing. But were you able to keep most, if not all, of the workforce on over the last couple of months?
Yeah, we were really lucky. There was only, a couple of layoffs, but it didn't last very long. They were called straight back as soon as it kind of looked like we were starting to train a lot more horses again. It was more like the riders and things like that, because we can do a lot of that stuff ourselves. But he pretty much didn't have to lay too many people off at all. We were very, very lucky. And like I said, once we started training them, they're back to training twice a week, ready to go in race bikes now, ready for startup. Everyone's back on full time and getting it all back into it.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. You've spent 5 years there now, leading trainer, it seems, forever in Canada. What can you point to? What do you think makes Richard so successful?
Like I said earlier, I think he classes the horses very well. We have a lot of claimers, and if you can put them in at the right price, that's how you win races. Don't put them over their head. And I think he just has quality there.
And again, a lot of raceway stock, a lot of overnight race horses, different from your operation. And you've focused primarily on young. Is you say that's always been your approach?
Back in the day when I was working a lot more as a career veterinarian, I used to just keep a couple of horses around, tried to get a top class horse for the maritime circuit. And I think it turned around for me in 2004 when I had a horse called Astronomical that we bought at the Atlantic sale for $10,000, and he went on and made well over $700,000 for us. And my life sort of took a change at that time. I brought him up late in the fall, started him late that year, '04 as a 2-year-old, and he raced a couple of golds there and did very well. And he had a terrific 3-year-old year and went on to be a good age horse. So from that point on, I started pretty well buying all young horses, and most all horses that we have in our barn. In fact, every horse that we have in our barn today were all yearlings that we had, with the exception of Century Pharaoh. Dave Ratchford started him himself as a baby and sent him up, I don't know, maybe June sometime, his 2-year-old year. But every other horse we bought as yearlings and made them to what they are today, or what they will be today in terms of the 14 babies that we've had. So I haven't bought a horse from, a race horse from anybody for many years now, probably 10, 11, 12 years. They're all bought at yearling sales.
Yeah, the formulas certainly worked well for you, and I think earnings now of around 14 million. I was thinking about it today, and again, if anybody out there thinks differently, they can let me know. But certainly from that perspective, one of the most, well, maybe the most successful maritime trainer of all time. There'd be very few that are certainly up in that echelon when it comes to money winnings.
Well, there's a lot of good maritime trainers, and there still is today. But a lot of them don't leave home, and they race for not a lot of money down there. So they don't have the opportunity to race for the purses that I do. Maritime people in general, there's a ton of good horsemen come out of there. In fact, Flamborough Downs would never have been if it wasn't for the Maritimers back in 1975 when they opened the place. I can just go through a long list of them, and I'm sure you're aware of that. And most all people at Flamborough at the time were all Maritimers, and there's a lot of them seated, got rooted quite well here in Ontario over the years, from Jimmy Whalen and Callie Rankin and so on and so forth. So I learned from a lot of good people, and I've developed some of my own methodology and protocols over the years, of course, but I use a bit of tradition, and I use a bit of new stuff as well, I guess, new open-mindedness. One thing I want to point out, when Natasha's not talking, those birds are quiet, but when Natasha starts talking, those birds start squawking.
They know I'm home.
Just getting back to your last point, Ian, so it must be flattering to you because a lot of the horse people you mentioned, great horsemen in the Maritimes, you hit the nail on the head, and you seem to be the go-to guy, or certainly two guys when guys from there get a good horse and want to send them to Ontario or to try the Grand Circuit. So must be flattering that they look to you as one of those guys to put their confidence in.
Yes, it's very flattering, and I'm still humbled, and like I said, very fortunate to have been associated with a lot of good horses over the years. And it's not all from the trainer. Like, you have to have something to work with, of course. And so I'm humbled a lot, and I'm very fortunate. I've made a career out of horses and veterinary medicine, so I've had the best of both worlds, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I wouldn't do it any other way.
Had a lot of nice horse flesh in your barn over the last 5 years, and a new recruit was looking pretty good before the shutdown, and one I know you're looking forward to having come back when racing resumes. But one of your favorites all time in the Moreau stable was a horse called Fool Me Once. Tell me about the relationship you formed with that horse.
Yeah, he came to us from Alanya. I remember the day that Donna messaged me, Tony's mum, and she said, "There's a horse coming up to you. He's vicious. You know, tell whoever gets him to be very careful with him. He's savage." And lo and behold, he ended up in one of my stalls. So I was kind of a little bit dubious about him at first. He was a beautiful looking big horse, and as it turns out, he was just a big pussy cat. He was such a kitten. I fell in love. Richard didn't like it because the dog it lived an hour. So basically, yeah, I used to get out there and jog him. He was, I absolutely love that. That's something like yeah, he was top class. Just something people like me wish they could have once in a lifetime. Whereas someone like Ian, he gets, you know, 5 of them in a season.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've got to look back at him. He was a top performer as a youngster. As a 3-year-old, raced against a vicious crop, including the likes of Captain Treacherous, and took on those rivals in the Pepsi North America Cup that year, and in fact was a nomination winner for then trainer Tony Alagna. So let's have a look back at one of the greatest victories from Fool Me Once, a horse that did go on to millionaire status and holds a special place in Nat's heart. This is from back in 2000. And
pacing, Sweet Talk and Satin gap the gate by a pair of lengths. Good beginning here for Fool Me Once, as Filion lets him charge off the wings of the gate from the outside. Martini Hanover from in second is on the gas pedal early. Between horses, Rock and Amadeus there splitting through from in third. Twilight Bonfire ducks in fourth. Fifth off the speed is Cougar Hall. Gapping out 2 more lengths back there from in sixth is Wake Up Peter. And the last one away is Sweet Talk and Satin as they race on over to the quarter. And that's up in 26 and 2/5. Put up front tonight, Fool Me Once, as he leads the way. Nothing but open road in front of him tonight. He leads by a pair of lengths. Back in second is Rockin' Amadeus. Martini Hanover is third on the outside. He's caught between a rock and a hard place, and Filion's body language says Dave Pallone is in for a rugged night, as Martini Hanover has got no shot of making the front, but he dodged a huge bullet and popped into the pocket spot. Jangras simply got him out of the road and sits in third with Rockin' Amadeus as he tips to the outside here. Half-mile speed of 54 and 1, so 27 and 4 under the gun in that second quarter was Fool Me Once. He gets pressure now, pressure in the form of Rockin' Amadeus, who's first over and driving. Martini Hanover's third in the pocket spot. On cover, Twilight Bonfire fourth. Cougar Hall is fifth in the backfield. Racing along sixth is Wake Up Peter. Lacking pace at the cones, though, on the inside. Driving up outside of him from in seventh now comes Sweet Talk and Satin. He's got a long way to come and a short time to get there. 3 wide from a tough spot comes Sweet Talk and Satin now. 3/4 in 121 and 2. 27 and 1/3 panel. A slap of the wheel disc, and it's still Fool Me Once on top here by a pair of lengths. Second on the outside is Rockin' Amadeus. Not closing. Fool Me Once on the inside for Filion. Kicks away by a pair of lengths. Again running out in deep stretches, Rockin' Amadeus. Shooting through his Martini Hanover. Wake Up Peter. Fool Me Once. Huge. Fool Me Once to win this one by a pair of lengths. 148 and 1.
fastest victory of the Pacers' career from back in 2013. And Fool Me Once again went on to millionaire status. And that was a Pepsi NA Cup elimination from that year. Went on to finish fourth in the final and actually raced very well, beating only 2 lengths to eventual winner Captain Treacherous on that occasion. We have our first question of the night. Nat, this one goes to you from J.D. Varnell, wanting to know if you had any female influences in particular growing up, or whether it be back home or here in North America.
I've lost all your audio, Greg. I can't hear you at all.
I can't hear him either.
Yeah.
Hear me now? Can you hear me now, guy?
Now we can hear you.
There you go. Yeah, we had a question from J.D. Varnell wanting to know if you had any female influences in particular, whether it be from back home in Australia or since you've been here in North America.
A lot from back home. A lot of the girls that I grew up driving with in our driving ranks a lot of them have all gone on to be leading drivers, premiership winning drivers. Karen Manning, Jodie Quinlan, Kate Gath, all women that, know quite well, and they've just excelled in their league, and they've gone on and they're, training big teams, and they're basically teaching the boys some lessons pretty much.
And when it comes to being a female in a male-dominated sport, I mean, do you get tired of hearing that? I mean, females, certainly on the training side in North America in particular, have been very successful at the highest level. It's been tougher on the driving side. And do you find that? And have you found it more difficult to try and break in here in North America, or is it the same in Australia?
Oh no, it's women are definitely given a lot more chances back home. Even, training, you get women with full stables. Over here there's only still really a small number compared to the men over here with big stables. But even driving back home, there's so many girls that are driving now. Like, I couldn't even tell you now how many of the new girls are popping up over there, and they're doing really good. They're in the Young Drivers Championships, and they're cleaning up. And over here, it's just like, it still hasn't really set in over here that we can do it just as good as the guys. And it's hard when you've got, I guess, a mentality, a lot of these older folks, that, this is how racing should be. It should be left to the boys, the women are the grooms. And, I've verbally had it said to me at the races, it's disheartening, because you're trying to change an opinion that I think you're never going to change. It's going to be a long time before it does get changed over here. And all you can do is just keep chipping away at it. And hopefully maybe there's going to be someone behind me that finally, stands up and everyone goes, hey, that girl can really drive, and they give her a go. I might not be that person. I might be the one that just keeps chipping away at everyone and paves the way for someone bigger and better behind me. And I hope I do. I hope that eventually happens for someone else down the road, and not just one person. I hope it happens for multiple girls that want to get into it.
And I think to say you've certainly garnered a lot of respect in the driver colonies at certainly the signature tracks in Ontario. You've become a regular there, but as you said, it's been very hard earned, I'm sure. And you talked about trying to pave the way for maybe younger people that are coming up and setting that example. Have you had an example of that? Have you had a young person, a young female that said that to you, that they're happy to see what you're doing?
The closest I could see would probably be, the likes Cassidy Snyder, who I do a fair bit of driving for them, but she's coming through, and she really wants to do it. She wants to get in the bike. Whether she'll end up race driving, who knows, but she's got the foundation there that she could if she really wanted to. And she's also got a dad that's behind her that could back her the whole way. And that's the one thing that's unfortunate for me. I don't have a stable, a good big stable behind me. I'm doing it pretty much by myself, trying to pick up drives where I can, just like any other freelance driver. But it definitely does help if you can have a stable behind you that wants to give you a go and wants to give you a chance. But I'm sure there's plenty of other girls out there that just don't know how to get into it or how to be given a go, and probably still have the same thought. They're told that they're just grooms, and it shouldn't be that way over here. It should be promoted that you guys can do anything you want to do. You just got to set your mind to it and go out and do it and prove that you can.
And interesting, when you look at the racing under saddle here in Ontario, it's other parts of the world, but kind of an interesting dichotomy there when you look at it, that it's predominantly female riders that are trying that here in North America. So it's just interesting to see. It's still a bit of a cultural thing, but the good news is for you, Nat, numbers are certainly heading in the right direction. You've been able to improve your totals the last 3 years consecutively, and coming off a season last year, and off to a great start this year, and hopefully that continues once we're back with live racing. But yeah, some interesting perspectives there for sure. Let's get to our second trivia question of the night next. Speaking of racing under saddle, in 2000, the great moneymaker and Julie Crone shattered the world record for under saddle. How fast did they go? In 2000, Lexington's Red Mile, when Moneymaker, who was retired from parimutuel racing, set a world record under saddle. And again, if you think you know the answer, leave it in our comments section. Right now, we will take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with more with Ian Moore and Nat Day in a moment. And welcome back to TV. Greg Blanchard, joined by Natasha Day and Dr. Ian Moore. We were to have Wally Hennessy, but he's having technical difficulties, so unfortunately not able to get Wally on the show tonight. Hope to get him back at a future. You talked about days, EI, then the Mario, astronomical. I catapulted you into a different level here in the province of Ontario. Then came horses like Impeccable. Well, there you go. But in 2000, again, took you to yet another level. And as a two-year against Circuit, certainly not what he went on to be at 3. Talk about his early 2 season and the progression from 2 to 3.
Only got part of that, Greg. Did you only get part of that too?
I was going to say, do you want to say that again?
I think you're talking about shadow play from 2 to 3 year old. Is that what you asked me?
Exactly. Yeah. Just talk about how much he improved between his 2 and 3 year old year.
Well, first of all, shadow play was a late fall. He was a June 8th. That was his birth date. And he was immature as a 2 year old. But he showed a lot of good things very early. In fact, he was probably been the earliest 2 year old that I've ever had an open bridle on training down. Because I remember the first time in early February at my track at home in PEI when I trained him with a couple other horses, and I can't hold this guy. He's just pulling all he can pull on me as a 2 year old that we're wanting to go on 30 or 35 with. And so he wore an open bridle from that day on, and plus some other things, and the Kieran bit maybe. But he had a lot of bad luck as a 2 year old. You know, if you look through his lines as a 2 year old, he drew the outside most all the time. It seemed like times that he shows the 8 hole, there's only 8 in it. Times that he shows the 9 hole, there's 9 in it, and so on. And he just had a lot of bad luck. I drove him myself when I first brought him up, and he won in 57. That ended up being his 2 year old record at Mohawk that year. And in his whole career, he only drew the rail once, and that was at the Little Brown Jug as a 3 year old when there were 3 horses drew for the 1, 2, and 3 hole. So he did fill out and mature a lot as a 2 year old. He had lots of time off, trained back super good. Well, one part I missed, I guess, I think in October, there was a month when we had no races for him, and we were trying to keep him going for one of the late ones, and I forget what it was now, but Ron McClellan, that's our GM group, and Serge Savard and I, partners, we discussed whether we should keep him or not as a 3 year old at that time. And so when he had the time off, I trained him twice over a 3 week period over Mohawk, all alone, 54 off a half in 1 minute the first time, off a half in 101 the second time. And I said, Ron, I think we should keep this horse. He's got a lot of high speed to him. He only wore a 54-inch hobble as a 2 year old, And then as a 3-year-old, it ended up being about 3.5 or 4 inches more that he wore. But he did certainly develop. He struggled early, 3-year-old, and drew the outside again a lot of times. And then Tim Teacher drove him one night in a condition race, and he won by 6, 7, 8 lengths and 150. And that was sort of the start of it there, where things started to turn around for him. But he had a lot of great desire and a will to win. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what struck me as a 2-year-old. Hopefully you can hear me okay. He had desire. I remember, a really high action to him. And you talked about the hobbles being let out 3 or 4 inches as a 3-year-old. I remember seeing him when he came back. He looked like he had a totally different gait. Was that something you did with the horse? Or was it just him growing and maturing?
Well, yeah, well, it was a bit of both. He used to paddle quite a bit with both front, particularly the left front. And over time, I used to lower him a little bit on the inside and wore aluminum shoes on him very early in his career as a 2-year-old. And that gait became more efficient as he got older. But oddly enough, the first time I put the hobbles on him as a 3-year-old, most 3-year-olds that I have, I always let them out a couple or 3 inches over what they were as a baby. And I think I let his out 3 inches. And I went to train him that day, and he wouldn't pace. It's just like he was never gaited in his entire life. And I took him in, took the hobbles up to 54, and he still couldn't pace. So it took me a week with the hobbles on to get him pacing again. And then eventually we did let them out 3.5, 4 inches after that, and he was fine. But he did mature into a very solid, good-looking horse, probably about the time when he was chronologically 3 years old in June as a 3-year-old that year. And that's sort of when things turned around for him. And he got to be a heck of a horse. And, you know, they always say that people only have a horse like that once in their lifetime. Well, we've been trying to get another shadow play since that time. And we've had a lot of decent ones over the years, but never another shadow play so far. So maybe that's the way it is.
Absolutely. Talked about him kind of from the switch. Tim jumped on board. And by the time the third week of September in Dale, he went into the like a really serious contender. So impressively in his elimination heat, and you had to be feeling great about that. But tell us what went on after that elimination heat between them and the final, and when you find out what he ultimately.
Well, you're cutting out a bit, but I got the gist of it. It's sort of a long story, but I'll shorten it as much as I can. But I trained him the day before on Wednesday. We had to go to the jug on Monday for the retention barn. It was more marketing than retention, which is great. I think we all should do that in big races. Show them off to the public, let them in and see them, instead of hiding them in a retention barn somewhere. I totally disagree with that. I mean, they do that in the Gold Cup. They do it in the North American Cup, whatever. Get them out there so the people can come and see them. Anyway, he trained super good. I couldn't get him pulled up for a mile and a half, 2:10 in the jog cart. I think it was 2:12. And he warmed up great that day. The track was like a pool table. The Greg Kuhn and those guys, Dan Kuhn, they do a great job of looking after that track. And anyway, after the first elimination, we were very ecstatic, and then he drew the rail as well. Nancy was bathing him, my wife, and I saw that horse was a little off in his left front. And so I got looking at it, and when she walked him out of the bath stall, he took a lame step, and yeah, he was sore. So just on a quick look, it looked like he had maybe a separation because there's a little bit of blood under the shoe on the inside heel of that foot. And so word got out there pretty quick, but not quick enough for Dave Miller, I guess. He had won the next heat with Lone Star Legend and a track record 49-2 after Shadow Play won a 150. And they asked him in the winner's circle, as Bruce Saunders, the trainer of Lone Star Legend, was trying to get his attention, who are you going to drive? And he said, well, I came here to drive Shadow Play. And then afterwards, Bruce told him about the horse being off. Dave came right over to the retention barn. I had enlisted a guy called Eric Wilt, who was the track blacksmith at the time, never met him before. And we decided to put aluminum shoe. He had aluminum shoes on, but we decided to add a leather pad and rivet it up by about the middle nail hole and leave the inside of the foot open, so he had no pressure on it at all. So he was doing that. Dave come up and stood beside me. We never looked at each other. He said, "Doc, what's going on?" I said, "Well, he just walking a little bit lame after that first heat." There was about a 20-second pause. Nothing was said. Dave just turned around and left. I guess he was real PO'd at me. Anyway, when we got to the paddock, you line up outside the paddock. Dave came. I handed him the lines and said, if he takes one lane step, bring him off the track. And he just got on, never said anything. The track veterinarian was a lady. I can't remember her name, but she stood with me at the gate, and we watched him come by after the post parade, and he had a big bow in his neck, and he was hanging on to him. Turned him right in front of the VIP tent, and I was waiting for him to walk lame at that time, and he didn't. And when he went behind the gate, it was unreal. But, you know, after the race, we're walking him back. As soon as he got by the VIP tent on the way to the stable area, it's like he knew it's okay to show lame now. He started walking lame before he got off the track. So it was really something. And he was in a lot of pain then at that time. And, of course, they're trying to get a urine test from him. And an hour later, they hadn't got one. He couldn't stretch out because he was so lame on his foot. I had enlisted a friend of mine, Dr. John Riker, to help me. I wanted to x-ray and make sure nothing was broken. And we wanted to treat him as well. And anyway, my daughter, Lindsay, was paddocking that day, and she went in, and the horse kind of struck at her, which is unusual for him. He never did anything like that before. So I said to the lady, the urine test lady, I said, listen, you got to draw blood. I have to get this horse x-rayed. I got to treat him. He's suffering inhumanely right now. So they did that, and we x-rayed him. It was all clear. So he was able to treat him with some anti-inflammatories and painkillers that night. And we stayed at Delaware. We had to stay for 2 days because he was too lame to truck. Saturday afternoon, about 2 o'clock, I took him out, and it was really, you could tell the next day there was going to be an abscess. And I pushed Saturday afternoon. It was really bulging, very soft. I stuck my thumbnail in it and broke it. And I said, start walking him, Lindsay, to my daughter. And he walked lame for about 2 minutes, and then he started walking sound. We had him on the trailer at 6 o'clock that night, heading back to Ontario. So it was quite a story. It was, it was a very big display of courage and heart that he showed to me that day, and I never forgot that. And I remember when he had his last race in Lexington, I was leaving on a 6 a.m. flight. I went over at 4 in the morning, and we sort of had a word, him and I did, and that memory came back to me, and I'll always remember that, because it just showed, to me what standardbred horses, given an opportunity, what they will do for people under the right circumstances. They're a very tough breed of animal, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you never get sick of looking at it. Let's take you back to 2008 and Shadow Play's second heat victory, capping off a double heat world record at the time in the Little Brown Jug.
And the trailer, Giddy Up Lucky. They're all in behind. The Grey Coon starting gate on the upper turn. The gate swings into the stretch, and here they come for the second heat of the Little Brown Jug. And they're standing up for the start. They're off and pacing. Shadow Play goes right for the lead. Lone Star Legend will tuck in second. Artificial takes the tuck third. Into the turn from the second tier. Giddy Up Lucky gets away fourth. Santana Blue Chip racing fifth. Round the turn 6. Rudy Red Nose. Mystery Chase treading the field. Goddess is just done. Straight alignment down the backside. And Shadow Play takes him over to the first quarter mark. 28 seconds. Snail's pace after those opening eliminations. Racing second. Lone Star Legend. Round the turn. Racing third. Artificial and Pierce. First up on the outside. David Miller coast away by 2 on Lone Star Legend. Artificial challenging on the outside. Santana Blue Chip comes to the outside as well as they race over to the halfway point. 56-1, 28-1, second quarter. Shadow Play the leader. Lone Star Legend, Artificial, Santana Blue Chip, Giddy Up Lucky fifth. Rudy Red Nose, Mystery Chase. Shredding the field, Goddesses Justin. 4 in, 4 out. Past the half, down the backside they go now. Shadow Play with the lead, and Dave Pallone moves on the inside, looking for some daylight with Lone Star Legend. On the outside, Artificial. 3 quarters, 1:23-4, 27-3, and Shadow Play opens up on Lone Star Legend. Artificial third, Santana Blue Chip fourth. Coming home, David Miller. Shadow Play win the Little Brown Jug. 1:50-1. World record. 2 heats.
Just amazing again.
Dave Miller at Shadow Play.
Ian,
Once he seated Lone Star Legend, who I think Dave Pallone realized he wasn't going to beat him out, just took the 2-hole tuck there. 28, 56-1. Artificial ranged up first over. Dave kept it rolling, and look at this.
Sorry, I missed that, Greg. The audio was
I was going to say, Dave Miller, and there he is with the whip in the air, and a big relief for him, I'm sure, that day. But when you know the backstory on the horse, and I know I was there in person, and I know exactly what you're talking about, Ian, seeing the horse an hour or two after the one leg up in the air, and in discomfort, you could tell, but it was incredible what he went out and did that day. Natasha, were you in North America at that time? Did you get to watch the Little Brown Jug that year?
Got to see one yet, but hope one day that, could have a horse one day to get there.
And Shadow Play, a bit of a globetrotter. He spent some time down under at Alabar Farm there, and of course has passed on many of his great traits to his offspring. Ian, you happy the impact he's had in the Stallion Barn as well?
Yeah, he's he gave a lot to us as a 3-year-old and as a racehorse in general in terms of financial success, and it's continued over the years. Last year he had a bit of an off year. I'm not sure what happened there in terms of racing, but prior to that he led. He was in a lot of the top categories in North America, and I've had a lot of Shadow Plays, and of course I might offspring. I might be a little bit prejudiced, but as far as attitudes and the way they break and the way they act, it's hard to beat them, I think. I mean, they've done very well. I've got a couple this year that I'm sort of a bit excited about as well, a colt and a filly. So, see what happens.
We saw earlier State Treasurer winning the U.S. Pacing Championship from 2015, but it wasn't the first time you won that race. Shadow Play also captured that event in 2009. Another great display from him on Hambletonian Day. And we've got that replay to have a look at next. We will take a look at that now. We'll talk more about Shadow Play afterward.
Durov won the West on the outside, fires out with Shadow Play, flying out of there. Bittersweet with speed from the inside. Mr. Big gets away and floats away in the 4th position right now, round the first turn. Good hold of Shark Gesture, stride for stride with Mercedes on the inside. And Artificial is trailing at this point as they march to the quarter, and Shadow Play paces on with Dave Miller, opens up by 3. It's Shadow Play won the West, and Bittersweet 3rd, Mr. Big 4th. Mercedes is 5th with Shark Gesture, and Artificial. First quarter was 27 seconds flat. Shadow Play, and Dave Miller calls the shots early. Out of 3rd, here comes Campbell with Bittersweet. Bittersweet with a back stretch rush to the front here. Won the West back in 3rd now. Mr. Big biding his time 4th. A peek to the outside with Sears. Mercedes is 5th as they near the half mile. Then it's Shark Gesture. Artificial still trails. And now it's Bittersweet, a 1:47.2 world champion at the half in 54 seconds flat. Bittersweet in front. Shadow Play is second. Won the West third. Edging out Mr. Big. Mr. Big now gets in gear for Sears to the outside with 3/8 to go. Tracking him is Mercedes from fifth. And then Artificial on the inside will need Racing Room sixth and Shark Gesture from the back of the pack. It's Bittersweet here. Push to the hilt and going full tilt. Shadow Play right there on the outside. Mr. Big looming large in third, but under urging. Won the West, gaps the pocket as they turn home. Mercedes swings to the outside. 3/4, 1:21 and 2 in the stretch drive. It's Shadow Play, but here comes Mr. Big on the outside. Shadow Play drifting out. Mr. Big is all out now. Won the West, looking for an upset from the inside. Shadow Play is home free for Dave Miller. It's Shadow Play. He came to pace today at 14-1 in 1:47 and 4/5.
So certainly had his moments at age 4 as well, Ian. In his 3-year-old year, though, remarkable he did what he did. Had to race against the likes of Some Beach Somewhere, kind of a maritime rivalry. And how much rivalry was that, or was it just kind of a mutual admiration?
Well, it was a bit of both, I guess. I found it pretty phenomenal, really, that two young horses that were trained in the Maritimes ended up being top horses that they were. And unfortunately for us, we were a 3-year-old year when Some Beach was around, of course, and 2-year-old as well. Because, as far as our horse goes, he won a lot of big races, and he did get some credit, but maybe not as much as he could have, because everything always went to Some Beach Somewhere, and that's just the way it was. He was a super horse, there's no doubt about it. And but when you think about it, over the last 20 years, and I haven't counted them, but I'm sure there's not a whole lot of 3-year-old Canadian-owned, Canadian-trained horses that have made $1.5 million as a 3-year-old, winning a lot of the big races in North America. So he's been special to us. Brent and I used to travel together a lot, and Brent McGrath, and we stabled at Mark Ford's. We were in the same shed row together, usually a couple stalls away, and we used to jog a lot together. And in fact, I don't know if it still is, but the Maritime Provinces Harness Racing Commission had a picture that somebody from Yonkers had taken of the two of us jogging at Mark Ford's track in Middletown, New York, and they put that picture in the front of the rule book for the Maritime Provinces. So I thought that was pretty neat. So it's, that both horses had a great following in the Maritimes. It was great because for simulcasting, they used to go and have parties and watch the races every night. When those two horses raced, it was really good. So it was very enjoyable for Brent and I and all of us together. We had a great time. So no doubt there was some competitive rivalry there, but we came close a couple times, especially in the Messenger, but couldn't quite get the job done. Some Beach was a super horse.
That was going to be my next question. Was there a race? Was there ever where you would? I think today's the day. I think if we're ever going to, it's going to be today. I mean, he was close, but just never quite got there.
Well, the Messenger was certainly one of them. It was a driving rain that night. I don't think I ever raced in such a rain, and the track had just washed right off. It was hard as a rock. We both horses went a tough trip, but Some Beach was out from the half on first up, so he went a hell of a trip too, and it was only nose apart at the wire. So give it our best shot. The Breeders' Crown that year, there was 2 horses got a bye. There was 12 entries, so Some Beach and Shadow Play got a bye. We elected to race in the hope that maybe we could draw the inside. I don't know if you noticed in that U.S. Pacing Championship, but he drew the outside in that one as well. So we did race, and he won, and we picked the 2-hole, and I guess where Some Beach drew, right beside us on the rail. So that's just the way it was meant to be, I guess. So it didn't make any difference. He was first, we were second in the Breeders' Crown. It was a lot of. I have a lot of memories from that, and we all do, like Ron McCullen and Serge and I do, a lot of memories and a lot of things that happened along the way, and met a lot of good people, stabled in a lot of good places, and made a lot of good friends. And be nice to have another one like that someday, but I'm not sure if it's going to happen.
Absolutely. And Nat, when you watch Shadow play and you watch big Grand Circuit races, I'm sure you're like every driver. You one day would like to be driving in races like that. How bad is the itch to get there at some point?
I think I'd just like to make it through to Dire Stakes stage personally at the moment. Just to get a drive in one of those would be good, let alone chasing those sorts of dreams. I think the reality is for me, the only way I could probably get there is if I had a horse of my own, and even then, do you want to take the drive and have that pressure on yourself, or give it to someone else and you can blame them? So,
True.
yeah, no, it's definitely a dream, to finally be able to train a horse, or someone might give you the trust in their horses and give to you to take it to that level. But yeah, like I said, as a driver, I think I'd just be happy to try and get a size stakes drive right now.
And talk about a driver, and obviously, more male drivers in North America at the top level. But is there one particular driver that you look at and you kind of say, they've got something a little bit extra there, and you kind of try and model yourself after or pick up tips from?
I think as far as the big boys go, and Dietrich, Yannick, they're all those drivers that, they can make things happen. And you just wish that you could have that sort of nous in a race that, things just work out perfectly. It also helps when you have a different caliber of horse to drive as well. But, it's those sorts of guys, they handle themselves professionally on and off the track. People look up to them. It's something you want to try.
And how would you describe your style? Sorry, if you can hear me now. How would you describe your driving style?
I guess I couldn't really tell you. I don't know. Sometimes it's reserved, but sometimes it's reserved because I'm driving the horses that you can't do the moves on. And I've had a lot of people say to me, she's not aggressive. She's not aggressive. It comes to the point when you can't be aggressive when you don't have the cattle. So you kind of got to drive to the horse's style. And, I've done pretty good with that way at the moment. I can get more aggressive, if I had better horses to drive. But unfortunately, I'm not getting the good horses. I'm getting the bread and butter horses that, you got to kind of look after in a race and cover them up as long as you can, and don't really have a sprint, and they, try to fall down sometimes, and that's what I get. And so I guess, yeah, at the moment, my style is probably reserved, but it's not. If you give me some stock, I can definitely be aggressive.
All right, and we were to have, speaking of great drivers, double Hall of Famer Wally Hennessy, but again, technical issues kept him out of the lineup tonight. Those things happened, and we hope to get him on a future show. Ian, back in your early days in Atlantic Canada, you would have driven against a young Wally when he was the kingpin in St. John, and you did a fair bit of driving yourself. Was there you did to do more driving, or were you always more for the element?
I missed the end of that. What was it about driving? I got the front start of it, but not quite the end of the question.
Sorry, yeah, my audio isn't very good. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just wondering if when you were driving more back, for example, when you had horses in Eastern Canada, did you ever want to do more driving at any point, or were you more the all-around trainer driver?
Well, back then things were a lot different in terms of drivers versus catch drivers. There was no such thing back in those days, and I always wanted to drive. I enjoyed that a lot, and but back then it would be basically the horses that you own. I did when I went to school at the Nova Scotia Agricultural College in Truro. I stabled with Clarkie Smith's father, Cyril, and he had a stable of 6 to 8 horses, and I used to drive all his horses every night in Truro Raceway there, and that was a lot of fun. and I've had a few over the years, but you know, you look at the stats, you can see that I haven't driven a whole lot compared. You know, there's drivers drive today that have 3 times as much in a year as I have had in a lifetime. I still like to get a couple or 3 drives every year. Usually it's with problematic 2-year-olds that nobody else can seem to get around for me, or I might want to take them to Grand River or Clinton to race against Natasha maybe, just because I've had some problems with them and I don't want to give up on them. So I still have a couple or 3 or 4 drives every year. Try to get a win every year if I could. So and I do all the qualifying, as I mentioned, and I still enjoy that quite a bit. So you know, I'm getting up in age now, but I still enjoy it, and it's too late to start a career at it now. But a few drives every year keep me happy.
Yeah, always good to stay hands-on if possible, for sure. Let's go to our next trivia question, our final trivia question of the night. And speaking of Ian Moore and driving, Ian drove the winner of the famed Gold Cup and Saucer during Old Home Week of 1988 with which horse? Again, Ian driving the winner of the famed Gold Cup and Saucer in his home province of Prince Edward Island in 1988. Which horse did that come with? And we will have the answers to the trivia questions coming up just a little bit later. Nat, let's talk about a big moment for you back in 2013. The venue, Pocono Downs, and the Mildred Williams Series. When did you get the call to go compete in that event?
They'd had one previously at Freehold, and I got the call up for that. And then I couldn't tell you how far afterwards they decided to do another one at Pocono, and basically, yeah, straight on the list. And I said, yeah, I'll go, no problems at all. So, yeah, that was a fun night. That was a really great night. Nice to get a win at Pocono, and just a little notch under the cap for a little Aussie girl over there. So it was good.
How fun is that to get together with other like-minded like yourself? You know, it's fraternity here in North America. How nice was it to get together with a group like that on that?
Yeah, it's great to see the girls all getting out there and having a go. A lot of them, you know, just do it for part-time fun now. You get the odd one there that's training full-time, but it's nice to get them all together. And, you know, we're always doing something for a good cause. It's the same as the one in PEI that I did last year. You get the call up for that. You're always willing to go, ready, happy, you know. It's no problems, no skin off my nose to go and do something for charity, for a good cause. So, yeah, it's nice to see those sorts of things happen and to promote women in racing a little bit. I think we could do so much more, but I guess we got to take the opportunities now as we get them and as they come.
And you've kind of made an opportunity for yourself with a trotter that's really blossomed for you, a horse that you've been leasing for some time and then actually purchased just a couple of starts before racing shut down. Sizzlin' Hot Herbie is his name. And how long ago did you first begin leasing the trotter? What were the circumstances behind that?
I just happened to be in the right spot at the right time when I managed to get him. I had another mare at the time, LDL Gem, a claimer. She got claimed off me literally the night before I was to drive Herbie at Grand River for the current trainer then, and an older gentleman. And I walked up to Herbie this night and I kind of hugged him around the head and I said, "You want to come home with me, Herbie?" And Dave said to me, "Do you want to lease him?" And I'm like, okay. So I ran and got the paperwork done straight away and I took him home that night. It was just right place, right time. You know, there was so many people that were kind of like, "You got that horse? How did you get that horse?" Like, we wanted that horse. And yeah, he's such a cool character. He's such a nice horse. He's done so well for me. I really appreciate every opportunity he's given me.
And you said there's a bit of a tie-in with Ian. He helped you out with the trotter at one point? Yeah,
I got Ian to look at him because he's not the best gait trotter. He he has his little funky moments behind. He manages to hit up high, and he had a ginormous leg when I got him. It's never going to go down. That's always been like that, I think. And I took him to Ian, and nothing wrong with him. Why he had such a bad hitch, and I tried different bits of shoeing on him, and nothing had worked. So Ian went over him. We injected him everywhere. We X-rayed him everywhere, and we tried a few more different shoeing changes on him. My farrier was very patient with me as far as what I wanted. I kept saying, nope, I don't want this. I want to try something else. And we've ended up hitting the nail on the head with him. And he hasn't looked back. He's gone ahead in leaps and bounds for me.
And one of the last starts before racing was paused was a winning effort in London at the Raceway. Before we look at the replay, just set the scene for us on that day.
Well, I pretty much took him there because he'd been racing there all season pretty much, and I was just like, whatever you earn for me, I'm happy. I've bought you, so hopefully, I'd be happy with the 5th. I wouldn't really care. And he went out there, and we had the usual suspects in the race. Absolute Sealster and Power and Grace, and they're top class mares that they're strong competition. And it was a matter of who draws where all the time around London in that class in the preferred trots. It's who gets the better draw generally gets the better finish post. So yeah, he powered on. It's almost like he knew that I'd bought him, and he's like, Mum, I got to repay you. So yeah, he did a good job. I was very thankful.
All right, let's take a look back at this from just a couple of months ago here at the Raceway. Now, Sizzling Hot Herbie.
The rough. An absolute Sealster. Open bridle tonight. Gets the marching orders early. Sicario along the inside to be second. Sizzling Hot Herbie got away in third. Cena Magician next in line for the trailer. Power and Grace. Even money fave and faved since betting opened up. The 4, Absolute Sealster. Front ending and freewheeling tonight for Young. Right there in second, the hitman, Sicario. Very tight lines in third for a sharp-looking Sizzling Hot Herbie. 29 and 2, the quarter mile. And appearing to be comfortable thus far, Absolute Sealster. Sicario is right on the bit here in the 2-hole. Thinking about it, Sizzling Hot Herbie is going to go first up now for Day, providing cover to Cena Magician, who's floating on out there in fourth. The trailer continues to be the mare, Power and Grace. 2 in and 3 out. And a lap to go here in the opener. Absolute Sealster right on the wheel now. Sizzling Hot Herbie, Sicario still up there in the top 3. Gapping slightly on cover, Cena Magician, and still last, though only 3.5 off the lead. Power and Grace, 59 and 4 the halftime, 30 and 2. Rate it, second quarter, Absolute Sealster on top. The lead is 3 parts of a length. Sizzling Hot Herbie's going for it now. Sizzling Hot Herbie. A stiff challenger on the outside. Sicario has been tripping out. Cena Magician and now way up on the outside. Power and Grace. 128 and 2. 28 and change speed through the third quarter. And this is Sizzling Hot Herbie going a big one. He puts the head in front of the mare. Absolute Sealster now on the wide side. Power and Grace. Power's up late for MacDonald. Sizzling Hot Herbie. Absolute Sealster. Power and Grace. A 3-way thriller in the Wednesday night opener. And it goes to Sizzling Hot Herbie. Herbie appeared to get there for Day. Absolute Sealster. And Power and Grace in the place photo, 159 flat.
59, that's a big trip, Nat, in March over London. And you drove the horse with purpose. Obviously, he was telling you at the quarter he was good to go that day.
Yeah, he's good to go every day I turn up with him. He's never run a bad race for me. He always tries. He loves going first over on those little tracks and grinding away. He does whatever I ask him. Whatever I mission I put him at, he just does it. So, and, you know, I've never had to fully ask him all the way out to the finish and get him to the bottom of the barrel, and he pulls up great after the race, like he hasn't even gone a trip. So, you know, and I train him tough as well. Like I train him to be able to do those trips. So, because I know he doesn't have blistering speed, he doesn't have blistering gate speed, he kind of lacks a little bit in those areas. So I have to train him to make up for it in the other aspects of things. So, yeah, he can do it tough all day long.
Hope we're back on the racetrack very, very soon. Things are looking much more promising. You're both very busy
Your audio's gone again.
in day-to-day operations, but you try in some time to enjoy yourself. And Ian, recently you got a very hobby. Can you tell us about that? All right. Just saying, can you tell us about your interesting hobby that I just found out about recently?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've always wanted to do it and never had time to do it. It's fairly intensive to get your private pilot's license. So I started in late November of 2017 in Florida. And so I got my license in about end of February of the following year, and I've been flying ever since. I've got my own plane now, and I thoroughly enjoy it. And no matter what goes on the ground that day, stressful or not stressful, as soon as I get up there, it's just me in the clouds, and I just love every minute of it. So I've flown the plane from Florida to Ontario and down to Harrisburg last year, and back to Florida then from Harrisburg. And I even flew to PEI last year, which I won't be able to do now, I guess, with all the quarantines on here. But I really enjoy it. It's been great. I've learned a lot over the last few years. Took Sylvain with me, actually, to Ohio when Century Faro raced in the, or was it Ohio? It might have been Hoosier Park when he raced in the Jenna's Beach Boy down there last year. And we had a great flight there and back. It was really good.
So if things go sideways on the training side, you might have an income to fall back on at some point, chartering flights for the drivers. Once things are open, obviously.
Yeah, well, before COVID-19, Air Canada actually called me. So, but now they're furloughing a lot of people, so they haven't called me lately. Just kidding. But anyway, I really enjoy it, and it's been a great sideline for me. Like I said, it's always something I've wanted to do and never had the time to do it, and I really enjoy it. And even Nancy likes flying with me now, where she didn't initially when I first got the plane. So it worked out good.
She wanted to make sure you got good at it before she ventured in too far.
Well, I think, yeah, she came with me a time or two. I think it was more to please me more than anything else. But now I think she sincerely does like it. I think now she flies with me back and forth to Florida, obviously, and other places that we've been. So I've gone to a lot of places. In Ontario, I went all over the province last year. One of my favorites being Killarney up by Manitoulin Island, where you can get world famous fish and chips up there, fly over Georgian Bay, and it's been really good. So I've enjoyed it a lot.
Well, listen, when you're allowed, hopefully you can take a trip to PEI and some lobs at some point.
Yeah, I could do that. No problem.
And Nat, no one knows better than you, how grueling this business can be. You're working during the day in the barn, and then you're off generally every night racing somewhere and driving. Do you have any free time to pursue any hobbies or do anything outside of racing?
Not when we're racing. No, none at all, pretty much. I'm thoroughly enjoying this downtime. It's great. I don't have bags under my eyes anymore. It's fantastic. So I've actually put on probably 10 kilos, which is great too. And, you get to have decent meals every night. So I'm kind of thoroughly enjoying this. But yeah, the hobbies, it's kind of out the window for me right now anyway. So maybe later on, maybe when I get older.
I read something about you. Did you have a former business, or maybe you still do it, or maybe it's another Nat Day, I don't know, that sold custom diving helmets?
Yeah, I did that in Australia. Yeah.
Okay.
paint race helmets and whatnot, do my own. And yeah, I'm kind of not pushing it or anything over here because basically you never have the time. It's hard. It's something that I did back home. Whether I go back to it eventually, who knows? But it is quite a time-consuming little hobby. So,
Sure.
and yeah, at this current stage, it's full work.
All right. Well, we're here again with Nat Day and Dr. Ian Moore tonight, thanking them for taking the time to be on COSA TV this evening. And time now to recap our trivia questions from tonight. So we had 3 of them, and we've got some photos and videos to go along with the answers tonight. So changing it up just slightly, and a bit of a theme going along with these trivia questions this evening as well. So we'll take a look back to the first one that we asked off the top of the show, wanting to know who was the highest priced yearling ever sold at auction in Canada. And the answer is a guy we're going to have a look at in a moment, Marlborough Sealster. There's Ian's wife, Nancy, at the head. This guy, a $270,000 yearling, sold right here in London last year at the London Selected Yearling Sale, a son of Bettor's Delight. Ian, how is he doing?
Well, he's not doing too bad. He's got a good attitude for a Bettor's Delight. A lot of the male Bettor's Delights I've had, except for Malicious, I guess, are a little tricky to start with, but he's been very good. He's a little bit on the lazy side, let's put it that way. But he'll follow all day. He's great gaited, and he's still a good-looking horse as he was when he was a baby. We trained him first time in the bike here on Saturday at Classy Lane, 2-4 and a bit on Saturday. So I was very pleased with that. And I think he's coming along just fine for the stage that we're at now.
Obviously, you went to the yearling sale with the full intent to take him home. What was it about him that made you want him?
I go to Sealster Farms every year, as I mentioned earlier, about a month or so out, maybe a little longer, 5 weeks or whatever. And whenever I saw him, he was just a marvelous looking animal to me. Conformation wise, very solid, seemed to have a good head about himself, and had all of the traits that I would look for in a yearling. Plus he was by a sire that I really liked, Bettor's Delight, and well bred on the mare side. So I talked to Jeffrey Snyder, and him and his son decided we would buy him. Now, we didn't intend on going that high for him. But it's funny how it worked out, and I can't quite remember how the story goes, but Anthony Beaton had an owner that wanted the horse as well, and I think that he was watching online and had a delay and told Anthony to go one more when he thought it was 150, which is about where I was supposed to go. So I think Anthony had something like 250, and not 150, but he had 250. And we had the next bid on him in the final one. So I think that was the final bid that I was going to make, that's for sure. So, but it's funny, like for a number of years for me, we never spent any more than $25,000 on a yearling. Like Shadow Play was 16, Astronomical was 10, Impeccable was 20, Malicious was 45. He was probably the most expensive one we had, him and Well There You Go in 2009. And it wasn't until after Shadow Play that we actually spent a little bit more money on some yearlings. So last few years we spent a lot. Just because you spend a lot obviously doesn't mean that they're going to be any good, but at least you leave the sale with one of the best looking ones there, and at least you know that you're not the only one that likes them. So that's a good thought when you leave the sale anyway.
For sure. All right, as mentioned, supposed to have Wally Hennessy with us tonight. Wally, great career for him, double Hall of Famer, as we mentioned, and the horse that he was well associated with over the years was the great Trotter Moneymaker for trainer Jimmy Takter. Well, after retiring in 2000, she took a shot at the world record under saddle with Hall of Fame jockey Julie Crone on board that day, and she in fact did shatter the world record. How fast did she go? The answer, 1:54.1 at Lexington's Red Mile, and that shaved more than 4 full seconds off of the record as it existed at that time. And there is a look back at Moneymaker and Julie Crone from back in 2000. And that racing under saddle, is it? It's more popular, is it not, in Australia and down under than it is here?
I actually think it's more popular Sweden. We
Okay.
do have it, but it's not something that, you know, it's really pushed or anything like that. I know Sweden, it's definitely a big go-to thing over there.
Have you ever tried your hand at it?
I did it once in Australia. We did have one race down at Moonee Valley before it shut. Yeah, the horse stepped away, the trotter stepped away at the standing start, the saddle slipped back, and then I spent the whole time just basically trying to hold it together.
Sure.
Yeah, so that was...
What about you, Ian? You ever try racing under saddle?
Absolutely not. Nancy used to ride
He'll fly a plane, but he won't do that.
Yeah, Nancy used to ride Saunders Glory back in the day, but he used to hit the pace a lot, so he's kind of hard to stay on. Sure. But I used to ride them bareback when I was a kid. In fact, Jimmy Whalen and I had a little business going when we were about 15, 16. We grew up together in Summerside in PI, and the racetrack in Summerside was about half a mile from the waterfront. There's a kind of a shore there where you could go. So Sundays and Saturdays, we'd be down there in the afternoon, and people would bring horses down, walk them down from the track. We used to go out and swim them out there all the time for $5 a horse. So we did very well at it. And I almost drowned one day. I had one that rolled over on me and hit me in the head with a foot on the way over. And I said, but anyway, it was still a lot of fun back then. Don't do that anymore.
Yeah. That's a great story. All right, our final trivia question tonight, and we talked about it earlier. Ian Moore drove the winner of the famed Gold Cup and Saucer in his home province during Old Home Week of 1988 with which horse? Well, we figured we might as well show you. The answer is the Papermaker, owned by RGMA Group Limited. Ron McClellan, of course, the co-owner of Shadow Play, so obviously that partnership living on over the years. But this is back in 1988 with Ian in the driver's seat on a less than ideal night in Charlottetown. Let's have a look back at that year's edition of the Gold Cup and Saucer.
On top by 2. Beeler Hanover gets closer, second, and there he goes up on the outside. Second look, the Papermaker down along the rail. They're by the 3/4 mile mark, and it's Gimbel, the Papermaker down along the rail. The Papermaker's on top. Gimbel, Beeler Hanover's coming on. 3 wide as they swing for home. The Papermaker, Gimbel and Beeler Hanover, their heads apart. 1:31 by the 3/4. It's the Papermaker on top. The Papermaker's coming home. Beeler Hanover, the Papermaker's drawing away. The Papermaker and Dr. Ian Moore win the Gold Cup and Saucer. Shallor Phantom second. Maple Grove Shadow third. Beeler Hanover.
Fun trip down memory lane from 1988, and even back then, Ian, with the inclement weather, you could still see the crowd. Back then, they used to let people even go into the infield. I don't know if it was so much letting them as just trying to accommodate them because they were going across anyway. But what kind of a thrill was that for you back in 1988?
Oh, that was a huge thrill, I guess, for me. I mean, the Little Brown Jug and the Gold Cup and Saucer, 2 races that I'll never forget, and especially that one in '88 and the one that we had in 2012 with our son Tyler driving 18 in the Gold Cup and Saucer as well. And you know, they give you a ring for the Little Brown Jug. Well, back about 6, 7, 8 years ago, the CDP retrospectively gave rings to all the winning drivers of the Gold Cup and Saucer over the years, and so I have those 2 rings in my possession. So it was quite a thrill. The first 4 races that night, the conditions were beautiful, and they were on tap for a record live on-track handle. I think they had done something like over 100,000 in the first 4 races that night, and then the skies opened up. There was 20,000 people there, and probably half of them went home, but they did come back to the final. And like you say, They used to encourage them to go across in the center field. They had barriers set up, but it was kind of sketchy back then too. I mean, they'd run right out. They'd be within 6, 7, 8 feet of the racetrack when you're going by with the horses.
Sure.
So I guess insurance shut them down at some point in time, but it made for the whole event, and it helped that event grow to what it is today. There's no doubt about it. And the Gold Cup and Saucer still holds a special place for me in my heart.
And you took the short way home that night as well with that memorable move up the inside. One of the most memorable editions of the Gold Cup and Saucer, even all these years later. So a big thrill, I know, for you, and fun to look back at that one from 1988. Time now to look at our poll question before we wrap up the show this evening. And here's the question that we posed off the top of the show. As racing gets set to return here in Ontario, ahead of other major sports, what will the impact be on handle, in your opinion? Will it be a massive increase, significant increase, just a slight bump, or no impact at all? And most people think there will be a significant increase in handle, 60% of those who voted tonight. So thank you for that. Thank you for submitting your answers in our trivia question tonight. We will draw one name at random, and we will post that winner on our Facebook page as well. Want to remind you that coming up this Sunday night, the second online auction from Hoofbid, the new online app, will take place this Sunday evening. And don't forget, if you create your Hoofbid account during the month of May, you're automatically entered for a chance to win $1,000. So find out more by visiting www.hoofbid.com. The new app, new way of buying racehorses online, available on the App Store and Google Play, and their second online auction coming up this Sunday night. We'll have another edition of COSA TV coming up on Sunday night as well. So Nat and Ian, thank you so much again for joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure, and I want to wish you both the best of luck this season once racing resumes.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks very much, Greg. Yeah, and I wish everybody else the best of luck once racing resumes. It's always been a bit of an advantage for us when we come home from Florida with fresh and sharp horses, and we get to tackle some of the ones that raced all winter, and now we're not going to have that advantage every year because they're going to have a bit of a break as well. So I'm looking forward to it, and I wish everybody the best all summer. Stay safe and be well.
All right. Thanks again, guys, for joining us tonight. Much appreciated. Good luck to you. And again, thank you for watching this edition of COSA TV. Our apologies for the technical issues tonight. That's live TV. There's not much you can do about it. And we'll hope for better next time. We'll be back with you this Sunday night once again at 7:30. Enjoy the rest of your night, and so long from this edition of COSA TV.
COSA, the Central Ontario Standardbred Association, proudly serving Ontario horse people with integrity and accountability. Collaborative, supportive, helping to ensure a vibrant harness racing industry. Lifetime membership is free, and there are many benefits. Become a new member today. COSA, representing the interests of horse people racing at Ontario racetracks. To find out more, visit COSAonline.com.